And here
That's
we
become
are.
our traditional intro, is a little laughing. The Stacey's Mom podcast. So, hello, apostate, and welcome to our channel. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Thank y'all for
Hello.
inviting me.
Yeah,
So good to connect with people of the community,
I
of the
know.
atheist community.
I was looking today on your Facebook, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have like 360 something friends in common. So it's so nice to just get to know other people and get to hear their story. And
I feel like
yeah,
you should have your online name up there, Stacie. Apostacie.
I know. I think we all
I
love
love
to
that
just
name. So
play
clever.
on that apostate word and name. So yeah, it's I can't wait to hear more about you and how you,
Yeah.
yeah,
So were you
'cause
born into the church or did you become a Christian as an adult?
So I wasn't really raised at home in the church. If anything, I would say I was raised a little bit new age. So like I was
Oh,
raised believing in God, but more of like, positive thoughts and make things
spiritual.
happen and energy and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And so, but I did have very close family members that were charismatic evangelicals. So
okay.
I grew up around the tongue speaking and the healing and, believing in demonic forces and, all of that.
Okay, yep.
But so I went to school and college, and I think being raised in a very Southern conservative area, like that's just all I ever knew and believed was in God and the Bible and Jesus. And that's just all you hear. So I
Hmm.
never question it, especially knowing that you're taught that God knows your thoughts, right? And he knows if you're doubting or questioning. So I'm like, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
doubt. God knows my heart. I didn't doubt.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really into the church. And so but then I went to college and had a singing background, and so then I was
Okay.
invited to be a worship singer, and that's when I really got more involved in church.
Hmm.
And so then I was a good little Christian girl and and met my husband, who at the time was kind of new agey too, and we kind
Okay.
of grew together in Christianity.
Right.
Um, and he ended up being a pastor.
Oh
Oh,
wow.
This is
wow.
this is the
Okay.
very brief version.
It's okay. We
That's
can go
okay.
into more
Yeah,
like
and so
portions of it. Yeah.
I was a pastor's wife, and he got his master's in biblical studies, like really dug deep, and the deeper he dug, um, well, basically, we then now just to fast forward, we're now both atheists with a YouTube channel, kind of
Oh my gosh.
educating on why or the reasons why we came to not believe, and
Right.
it's a lot more biblical based.
Okay. So who was the one to sort of question first? Did one of you start to question, and then were you afraid to tell the other person, or did you start to question at the same time? Because I would imagine being a pastor and then being a pastor's wife, if you were the one to start to question, that would be really hard to go to him wondering how would he react to this. So who
Definitely. Well, I
who
knew
was
how
the
he would
first one?
react to it, so I
Right.
didn't want to tell
Was
him.
it you
But I was the
first?
first one
Oh,
to
Really?
doubt, and I think so. How it is, how
Mhm.
there is moments that happen that kind of challenge your
Yeah.
belief, and there is
Yeah.
struggle, but you don't really question it, or you don't
Yeah.
really imagine a world where you don't believe. And
Yeah.
so there was just a moment for me, like with the topic of gays, and where I was like, but that's love. Like, that's all.
mhm.
How is this not
Yeah.
God? How is this
Yeah.
not? If God made it, how is this not of God? And so,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
that was my first doubt to
Like,
thinking that the Bible may be wrong about that.
I feel like that is something that a lot of people start to doubt, is that particular topic. Um, for me, that was definitely one of the things. early
It
on.
was for me as well,
Yeah.
years and years ago.
Common.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Especially
So
being raised in the music world, I had a lot of friends who were gay, and so
Yeah.
it was like
Yeah.
I've seen them try to be the way that they're not, and that's just
Mhm.
not them.
Yeah.
Like, how are you gonna force
Yeah.
them to be that way?
Yeah.
yeah.
And especially a lot of them, they would say, I knew since I was 3 years old. Like, if they were boys, like, I knew I liked other boys. I had crushes on other boys. It's like, then how can someone be punished and sent to hell for a way that they were born? It
Mhm.
just didn't make sense to me, and it made me really angry. So,
Mhm.
So,
yeah.
so that was the first time I was like, okay, if the Bible was wrong about that, maybe there could be other things the Bible's wrong about. Let me
Exactly.
just for a moment question the Bible, like pretend that it's not true.
Okay, what
And
about the
that,
thought police? Weren't you afraid of the thought police?
Right.
yeah. And in fact, I remember like a prayer, like, please God, I'm going to question you. I'm going to doubt you, but like, please forgive me. Like, my heart,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
Mhm.
really figure out the truth
Yeah.
here.
That's what I would always say is at least God knows my heart. I'm
Mhm.
being genuine. Like I don't want to doubt, but those doubts are there, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
We
But
both got dry mouth at the same time thinking about
yeah.
it.
It's
Yeah.
contagious. Thirst is
Oh my
contagious.
gosh. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
hard to even think about remembering, being
Yeah.
But
scared of even your own thoughts and being
And
judged for your thoughts. Because that thing,
yes.
God knows your heart. Well,
Yeah.
my heart was not in it. So I was like, well, I'm hooped.
Yeah.
All right,
Mhm.
carry on.
Well, it was also during the time of the elections initially
Oh,
where,
okay. Like in 2016? Was that it?
yes,
Okay.
where
Oh,
It's like everyone knows what election you're talking about in the
yes,
States, the
uh,
that
election.
election.
so it's
Mhm.
either the Trump election or COVID.
It
Those are
does,
the
yep,
two.
the
It
Trump
seems to be.
election
Yeah.
where at the time, my husband was really into conservative radio and
Mhm.
like deeply politically conservative, but then to see the Christian party falling for somebody who like looking at it at face value, that's not love, that's not of God. And so it was like
Right.
really shocking. Um anyway, I just remember
Yeah.
all of that going on, but also um me questioning and me telling my husband like, okay, I'm questioning, I'm doubting,
Right.
and it not going over very well. Like he
Really?
Really?
was really, because think about it, he was
Yeah.
getting his master's degree in this. So
Mhm.
it's like if you
It's
don't believe, like, I know, just trust me. Like, I'm the
mhm.
expert in this. So
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
not believe is not only to doubt the Bible, it's to doubt him and the thing he's
Yeah.
studied and
And
an
his
expert
whole life is
on.
kind of
Exactly.
pivoted on this decision.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're kind of taught like the woman leads astray and leads a man astray in Christianity. So it was kind of
Yeah.
like, I rebuke you, Satan, like that
Right.
kind of like,
Get thee behind me.
yes.
Yeah.
And it came to the point where I was like, if that's how you believe, then you're gonna have to leave me.
Mm.
And then he never
Wow.
said anything else. And like he was understanding of me taking that path. And it wasn't that long after that he started going on his own journey, but it was
Hmm.
different times, and luckily we ended up in the same place and we had our own journey, but we also kind of shared it together because his journey was like he was sharing his journey with me as he was going through it.
Oh my God. Okay.
So there was also a time where he's like finding out all this information and like,
Right.
well, I'll just go into it.
Yeah,
Do it.
do.
Do it. That's why you're
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
So shortly after, then, it's COVID. He's watching videos online and like really digging deep into scripture. But now these Bible experts are saying this is mythology and like
Right.
explaining how the scriptures or the writings are like some of them not are anonymous writers, or they're just not credible as
Mhm.
sources.
Right.
Okay.
So he's like sharing with me different myths he's learning about and all the similarities between the Bible, and he's sharing with me learning about history and how there's so many similarities between all these other like, for example, the
Religions and stories.
Holocaust, there's a lot
Okay.
of ties to religion and religious views. Um, I was going down more the science psychology route, and he was going more
Okay.
towards the history, archaeology, mythology route, and we were
Mythology,
sharing with each
yes.
other.
Yeah.
Right.
And there came a point where I'm like, "So what are you saying? So do you still
You're gonna meet
believe?"
in the
And he
middle.
wouldn't, like, say
Yeah.
it, and I kept on, like we'd have another conversation, I'm like, "So what are you saying?"
Yeah.
And so finally he had to be like, I don't believe anymore."
Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
God.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's such a big moment too, because I
Wow.
remember for me to finally say those words, it was scary, but it was liberating at the same time. I kind of knew inside that I I didn't believe, but to say it was like, oh, what am I like? What
Am I
happens
gonna
next?
die?
Like what happens once I say these words? Like you can't take it back, but I also wanted to know how it felt to just admit it. So did you kind of already know you didn't believe? You just kind of wanted to hear how he was feeling, or
Had you
him
already said
say,
it?
yeah, had you already known that you didn't believe? And
I had already thought Christianity wasn't true, or the Bible wasn't
yeah.
true,
Okay.
but I was still, like, hanging on to the concept of God and maybe even spirits and maybe even reincarnation and all of
Okay.
Okay.
that at the
Something
So some
time.
kind of like
spiritual.
a little bit of that new age kind of was like in the
Woo.
back of your head,
Right.
like as a possibility.
Yes. So we were both,
Okay.
like, still deconstructing little by little in
Okay.
our own
Okay.
ways.
Okay.
Um, but yeah. He
We should have had you guys together. I had no idea. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
it
I
was
had
it was
no.
a fun journey.
So was he still a pastor when he had to?
Oh, no, so,
Okay.
I mean, I wonder what would have happened if things hadn't changed, and what really changed is right before all of that. Well, okay, so I guess this would have been maybe, like, 3 years before we started questioning. When my husband was a pastor at a church, he was let go, and so
Okay.
after
Oh,
that point, we were home, we
Okay.
were like okay, so I have to back up.
It's
that's
okay.
okay.
It's
So
okay.
All
before
right.
before all of that, we were really involved in the church. So I was like on the worship team and Sunday school teacher,
I can
and on the
so picture you
weekends
up on there.
Yeah.
and on the weekends, hosting different families in our home. And for my husband, he's working all week, and then on the weekends he's or Saturday preparing for the Sunday service, and then
Mhm.
Sunday you're working. So we were just like so involved in the
Oh
church.
my God.
Had 2 little kids. Like we're putting him in Sunday school all day long on
Mhm.
Sunday. It was just a lot of
Mhm.
dedication in the church. And you'll have to hear his story about like what
Oh
led to
my
him
God.
being let go, because that's a whole nother
Oh,
story. But
wow.
he was let go. It was something kind of unexpected and
Okay.
shocking to us. And
Okay,
so
next Monday.
we
Yeah.
left. So we didn't go back to the church. And we now we're home Sundays, and we're like now eating a big breakfast at the table and sleeping in and talking to each other and connecting and really enjoying our time. And so
Wow.
Wow.
we took some time off, and we're like, we need to heal, we need to rest. And then so we tried going back to churches and trying different churches, trying to find a good fit.
Right.
And it just like we already had seen too much, like behind the
Mm.
scenes, known what it's like to run the business and put on the performance of a service, to where it was
Yeah.
just not the
That's
same.
exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what so
And
many people, especially from who have been on the worship team or worship leadership, they all say the same thing. Um, they just know the behind the scenes is so different it is like a performance and
Yeah, it's a whole concert you're putting on
yeah,
weekly,
Yep.
every
and
week
that
Yeah.
takes so much volunteer work and
and
practice,
planning. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, biblically, are you really supposed to be worshiping and putting on a whole show? You're supposed to be like praying in private and in a
Yeah,
closet. So
exactly.
it's just a little
Exactly.
contradictory there,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but yeah, so it wasn't until a few years later that we were then learning, and then, you know, elections and COVID, and we were just
Yeah.
learning more and more extra biblical sources and information. And so we learned that they just contradicted what the Bible was saying. And so
Okay.
realizing the Bible wasn't true.
Wow. So what
Okay.
kind of extra like what were those sources? Like, was it still aligning with Christianity, or was that um
So
because
for
what
example, like I was wondering, okay, so if the plagues happened in Egypt and the killing of the firstborn male babies, like surely they would have that recorded in their history. And to
okay.
learn that
Right.
it wasn't.
Yes.
They don't
Okay.
say that that happened.
I started doing the same thing. I was like, my thought process, and this was kind of during COVID too. I started thinking, I wonder what was recorded in history that happened in the Bible. I started Googling certain things like, where was this in other parts of history? I was doing the same thing. That's so interesting. Okay. That's so interesting. I've
So
never heard anyone else say that. Yeah.
all those little things, when I found out that Moses wasn't the author of the book of Genesis and all of that, and it was like, well, then where did this story come from? Like, we
Yeah.
don't know. Like but yeah, how could he have written about his death and like
Yes.
things like that? Or
Yeah.
okay, so another one that was shocking to me was like that we have original writings of the myths way before Jesus, way before even the Old Testament.
Hmm.
Um, that
Like
are
the
the same stories. You have the originals, but you don't have the original Bible writings,
right.
nothing.
Right.
And so I was like, wait, we don't have any originals? Isn't that what the Dead Sea Scrolls are? No. And so just like
All those things.
things like that where it's
Was your mind blown when you started discovering all these things? Was it just like, okay, this is making way more sense than believing in Christianity ever made sense? Because that's how it felt for me. Finding out this was like, okay, these are all the answers to all these questions I had. This
yes,
is finally making sense.
exactly. Everything made sense. The world was like, oh,
Yes.
it made perfect sense. There was so much mystery in Christianity, always mystery. Oh,
Uh-huh.
where's God? What does he want for me? I don't know.
Yeah.
What purpose does he have for me? I don't know. Only God knows. It's like,
Yeah.
but when you're like, there is no God. Oh, well, that
Oh, well,
accident just
that
happened because that
yeah.
car hit that car. They weren't
Yeah.
paying attention. That's
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
as simple as
There's no
that. It's
hidden
right in front of
meaning
my
to
face.
everything.
Exactly. Yeah, it was so amazing just to be like, okay, you don't have to find the hidden meaning. You don't have to look for these weird little answers, all these things. Oh, well, this lined up this way because of this. It was just like, oh, the world just happens because the world just spins
Happens.
and it just happens. There's no divine
Yeah.
intervention. There's nothing that it's I found that my brain just relaxed as soon as I stopped believing, and it was so nice, you know?
Definitely.
Especially
You
with that
have
whole
more power
thought
and
thing.
control than you think.
Mhm.
Right?
You really do. Yeah. Yeah,
And
you
And you can
really
make a
do.
decision. You can make a decision. You don't have to call 5 people and say, "Can you please pray and get confirmation? I wanna do blah, blah,
yes.
blah." It's
Yeah.
like, will you just fucking do what you wanna do? It's like, seriously.
Yeah.
And bad things happening is a matter of fact of living. Like it happens to
Exactly.
everybody. It doesn't matter how holy you are. Bad
Yes.
Yep.
things can happen. And
Yeah,
that's
and they
just
just happen
something you have
because
to make peace with.
Yep.
You know,
yeah,
that's
and
part of life.
Yep.
it's not because of a secret sin, it's not to teach you a lesson. Yeah, it's just the way it is, so
And
All
it's
right.
been oh,
So
sorry. I was just
no,
gonna
no.
no,
say it's been
go.
so amazing post deconversion, like going to museums and studying different cultures and seeing the
Yeah.
artifacts and being like, they have their own system to explain the same things. Like we've done this through so many different
Yeah.
cultures to explain like different personality types or people
Mhm.
who are really talented or inspiration or, bad weather, bad things happening. Every culture has their impression that it must be coming from an outside
Right.
source.
Right.
And so it's just been fascinating to
Dependency.
kind of start
Yeah.
connecting those dots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel like the whole world just kinda opened up to you? Were you the type of person that like, for me, I wasn't gonna travel to like, not that I have traveled since I deconverted, but I kind of I really believed in the supernatural. So, for example, I was not gonna go to certain countries because I thought there's too many this is silly, but there's too many demonic things attached to certain countries, or I wouldn't have traveled to say Thailand because of all the Buddhist temples. But as soon as I deconverted, I was like, oh, I can go there and
Go anywhere.
I can go anywhere. I can visit a Buddhist temple just to appreciate the fact that it's just a nice building. And before I would have avoided places like that because what if I brought home some kind of demonic entity? You know what I mean? So now I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I can just go and appreciate cultures and appreciate
Architecture and
just architecture and like, okay, that's what they believe. That's totally fine. So I just felt like the whole world opened up to me because I had just closed myself off to everything and
You're not
every
living in fear.
yeah, exactly. So
Mhm.
did you kind of feel in any way that just things opened up to you?
So I didn't mention that part of my struggles was when I was a believer was when I was in college, I studied abroad. And I
Oh,
studied
okay.
abroad in Australia and Southeast Asia, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam,
Oh,
oh,
Philippines.
wow.
okay.
And
So you
then,
have experienced the whole
well,
world.
so we were
Yeah.
going to Buddhist temples and
Oh.
animist temples and celebrating Chinese New Year with, different traditions. And we were exposed to so many different religious
Mhm.
uh, traditions and perspectives.
Mhm.
And so I remember being abroad. Oh, I also studied abroad in Europe, in
Okay.
Spain, and traveled throughout Europe. And so there you see a totally different side of religion, and you can see how the religious beliefs impact their day-to-day living.
Right.
Yeah.
And to meet really amazing, generous, selfless people of other religions was like, wait, they're not bad. They're good
Yeah.
people too, and
Yeah.
their system works in their
Right.
country. Like, we do things differently, and it may work for us, but other ways can work too. So we don't
Mhm.
have, like, the best way or the best answer. So that had already really challenged my beliefs, and I remember calling my dad, like, "But I don't know, like, how do you know?" And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so, yeah, definitely, that had already opened my world.
So you
Right.
didn't
Okay.
have the fear of bringing home demonic
You were
things
just
or
like, "They're so nice. How can they be wrong or bad?" Yeah.
I think my whole life I've always loved learning about different cultures and different languages, and I meet someone
Yeah.
different, and I was like, "Oh, really? You believe that? Oh my gosh." And, like, I really thought
Mhm.
they were interesting because of that.
Yeah.
So that made me, like, really wanna learn
I
about different
always
religions.
I loved the people. I was always just so afraid of just I was just so indoctrinated with supernatural forces that
Yeah.
that's what scared me. It wasn't the actual people, it was just the kinds of things that they believed. I was
Mhm.
afraid of it being
Even
attached
just
to
objects or anything
yeah,
just would have demonic
which
things
is so
attached to them.
superstitious.
I I totally can relate, like, with yoga, I remember telling my
Oh,
friends, like,
yeah.
"No, that's bowing to other gods
Yes.
and"
Yep.
to
Yeah.
false
Yep.
gods, and they were like, "Well, if it's false, then why does it matter if I'm bowing to them?" And I was like, "Oh."
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. No,
Uh-huh.
I did not do yoga. I did it once or twice, and I felt really, really guilty, um, for
And
doing it,
repented.
but I repented, yes, but I was like, that's probably the worst thing I could do. I might as well have played with a Ouija board for stretching.
Totally. Now it's so silly. You're like, but it's just stretching
It's
and
stretching.
breathing.
And my husband, he would not practice it, but he would, like, do yoga in the evenings on YouTube when I was, like, putting the kids to bed, 'cause that be what he would do in the winter to stay active, and he would do it just hoping I wouldn't walk in and see him doing these yoga poses.
Undercover yoga.
Yeah.
He's hiding
Yeah,
from his
exactly.
Oh my
wife.
god.
And he's
Yeah.
stretching.
'Cause I was just a little high-strung, but
Yeah. She's totally over all that now.
yeah. Yeah. So tell us about your YouTube channel and how is it like you said it was biblically based? I wanna know
Yes.
more about that.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my husband has a master's in in biblical studies.
Mhm.
And so he really knows a lot about the Bible and
Yeah.
can read in Hebrew and in Greek and the original text
Wow.
and has studied a lot of what the academics have shared and has studied a lot about mythology that's very similar to Bible stories. And so what we like to do is take the academic information and
Mhm.
bring it to the masses, or like kind of highlight the main points
Okay.
and make it very concise, or like demonstrate the different points. And so just kind of making it more relatable, not relatable, sorry. Just like, for
Digestible?
example, you may have an hour-long academic teaching, and so we bring the high points and bring it maybe like a 20-minute episode. So,
Okay.
Okay.
um, because of his background, he's sort of the expert on that, and so I like to just ask him questions, and he explains, the history of things and how things came to be, and it makes
Oh,
so much
cool.
sense, and like bringing
Huh.
together archaeological evidence and historical documents and kind of bringing everything together.
Okay.
So
That's so
the
cool.
podcast is called Apostate of Mind on YouTube.
Oh,
Nice.
cool. That's
Yeah.
very cool.
Someone just asked a question. They said they may have heard your husband's story. Was he an associate pastor and then suddenly they couldn't afford to keep him on? Is that roughly the story?
Essentially that's it. Like, they needed to hire a worship pastor because that was the person putting on the whole production, and it was all relying on volunteers to
Yeah.
do, the band and the sound and the words, and like it's a whole thing that you can't just rely on
Mhm.
volunteers. So they needed to hire a worship pastor. So then it was like, yeah, we need to pick one. And so
Yeah.
basically they should have hired a worship pastor instead of hiring an associate pastor, because that's really the
Right.
role that they were wanting him to do.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So that's what
Wow.
we were told. And then they told us to tell the congregation on stage that it was us deciding to leave and
What?
pursuing
So they
another
made you
opportunity.
Oh,
guys
it's so
they
interesting that
made
God would
you?
have them lie.
Yes.
Oh,
And I was like
Oh.
sobbing on stage because I didn't want this. It was such a shock. And
Oh my god.
so because we were pouring so much time and heart into the families, like hosting
Yeah,
everybody at our house. Like, it was
yeah.
so much.
Wow. Wow.
wow.
Just
Mhm.
wow.
So you don't have I mean, what denomination of church was it?
Non-denominational.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
of course.
Yeah.
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 Seeker
Mhm.
friendly.
A
Yeah.
big mega church.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. That's crazy. Well, yeah, I
That's
mean,
good. That's good.
Yeah,
It
I
was your
don't, like
first
I said, if
stepping
we were
stone
still
on your
there.
journey out.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. We didn't have to
yeah,
struggle with not believing and still being
exactly.
tied to the
Stuck
church.
in stuck in a position and then because that's I mean, that happens. I mean, that's why there's the clergy project and it's a great
Yeah,
resource, but at least you
definitely.
you kind of got out and then went through this process. So, how has your how have your friends and family taken the news and reacted, or are you still in touch with anyone from before?
Yeah.
Because I
So
mean, everyone wants to know. We all have people in our past life, and it's like, how has it been?
Yeah.
so my parents who didn't raise me religious have been
Mhm.
so supportive and
Oh, great.
really watching all of our episodes and,
Mhm.
have said they're proud of us. So that means the world to
That's
us.
awesome.
Mhm.
Our extended family, they're so loving. I mean, they're really loving people, but
Mhm.
there's been a few moments where we'll like challenge each other. I'll speak back or say something back, and it's it's been fine. Like we really
Yeah.
I think they know, but they really haven't pushed the issue much.
Right.
And so I think we're just accepting each other of like how we are.
That's good.
Okay.
Mhm.
So
That's really
extended family, is that your in-laws or?
Like my aunts, uncles,
Oh, okay, the ones
cousins.
that were born again, fundamentalists,
Yes,
right.
tongue
charismatic.
talking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Gotcha.
I'm sure they're
Wow.
praying for us a whole
Oh,
lot.
I'm
Oh, I'm
sure they
sure they
are.
are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right now, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is there any
Yeah.
like how was the deconstruction process for you guys? Like do you find that you're still like things are coming up and and that you're still deconstructing now? Because I find that there's still things that I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like I'm done the deconstruction, but then something will pop up and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I still need to kind of process this. How has that been? Is there still things that pop up?
Yeah, I mean, I think even though it wasn't that long ago, and it's
Yeah,
so funny seeing like,
because hearing like just through COVID, because that's when I left. So the
oh
fact
yeah,
that Mark, yeah, so it's like pretty new. And same for
so
Mark,
you
and yeah,
understand, yeah.
yeah, it's not
So
that long ago.
I think all the information I'm learning, and I love being a part of atheists versus theists debate groups and like
Yeah.
really challenging believers. And I keep on hearing new information, like new
Mhm.
things they're sharing. And so I love learning more and digging into those things and sharing the rebuttal and just passionate
Mhm.
about getting information out there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so in answer to your question, like I feel like I deconverted a lot already.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's even hard for me to remember back to when I did believe at this point.
Yeah.
So I can't think of anything now that I'm still like struggling with.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad
Mhm.
about that because I think I did so much so fast, and then it's I just consumed so much right away because I was like, this is all fake. Oh my gosh, I have to know everything. And I was just
Yes.
nonstop podcasts, books, like everything I could get my hands on, I was devouring because it was my entire life that
Yeah.
I believed this. And I was like, wait, it's all fake. Okay, I need to know everything.
Exactly.
So,
There was a lot of gaps I needed to fill though. Like, okay,
yes.
God didn't do that. Okay, so then how does that happen?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so
Mm.
then why does that happen? So
Yeah.
it was definitely me pursuing knowledge too, like
Mhm.
evolution and
That was huge.
abiogenesis and like really understanding what the evidence does point to and
Yeah,
letting the evidence lead to your conclusion
Mhm.
or guide you
exactly.
to your conclusion.
Yeah, definitely.
Critical
Um,
thinking.
I was wondering this too, but how did the kids take it? What were the ages? Because I have kids as well, and so that's a fair question.
Yes,
How
that's
was
a
it for
great
them?
question. It was a good timing because it was right before they're getting into that dating age and all of that.
Okay.
So like you've got to we had to come out to the kids and be like, okay, all the
I
things
love
we've been
that.
teaching you, we don't believe in that anymore, basically.
Okay.
And so I think it made perfect sense to them too. Like all the dots
Really?
connected for them. They've really understood very quickly, oh, like that makes much more sense and moved on. Like
Really?
Wow.
I think that they adapted really quickly.
How old were they when you told them?
I don't remember, maybe like 10. 9,
Oh,
10, I would
okay.
guess.
That's
The kids
similar.
are close in age to
Yeah.
Stacey's.
Yeah.
Oh, really? How old are
Yeah.
yours now?
11, 9, and then I have a 4-year-old. So,
Okay.
he was like 2. My youngest was 2. So he really didn't have a clue. But then when I told the other ones, they were like 10 and 8 or 10 and 7. And so they were a little shocked at first, like because they were in Christian school from
Mm.
kindergarten till like grade 3 or 4. And so it was a little shocking, but I kind of did the same thing, like, hey, everything that because my husband, he wasn't a pastor or anything. He just kind of went along for the ride with me. Like, sure, if you want to go to church, we'll go to church. He believed in evolution. He believed in science. He was a very critical thinker. Like, he was like, there's no way that this can be true. It sounds like a nice idea, but I'll just support you. So he didn't have this big, like, huge aha moment the way that I did. So when I did kind of tell the kids, really gently, they they were sort of like, okay, well, yeah, this does make a bit more sense, but it was shocking in a way because they trust what I tell them too, and I didn't wanna give them, like, some kind of crisis to have to work through. Because I kept thinking if I was their age and my mom, like, if you would've come and told me, um, I would've been like, "Whoa, what?" Like, my whole
Yeah.
world would have flipped upside down, so I
And
had to
I
do it
didn't
really.
believe when you were their age, and I kept it quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, so I did it gently. I just kinda said, there's a lot of things that I thought were 100% fact, and I was wrong. So if you ever come across things that you wanna tell me, um, you feel free to, because I don't have all the answers. You're gonna find out things that I don't know, and you're gonna correct me on things. So it's been good. It's been really honest, and the one thing that my oldest did say was, "Mommy, I never believed in a talking snake." So,
Oh my
like I'm like,
gosh.
"Okay, good."
They're smarter than
So,
we
they
were,
really
but
are. Yeah.
and so I think also them being exposed to, for example, social media and TikToks, they get to hear a lot of people's perspectives and stories, and I think, for example, their generation, they have a lot more people that are bi and
Mhm.
homosexual or coming out early or maybe
Right.
trans, and so I think she already had friends that were like that, were already loving and understanding to them, even though her religion was trying to teach her otherwise. So I think she's like,
Okay.
oh, like I don't have to hate my friends now, or like I don't have to think what
Right.
they're doing is wrong now.
Mhm.
Okay.
Um, or for example, she had a kid in her class that was atheist, and before it was like, oh, you have an atheist in your class, and oh my gosh, demonic, and all
Yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah.
So now she's like, "Now I don't have to judge
Be
him,"
afraid
those
or
things.
yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and
Well go ahead.
one more thing, I remember my
Yeah.
daughter said she had anxiety about, like, God watching her when she would say a bad word or stick up her middle
Oh,
Oh.
finger or something, and
Yeah.
now it's like, you don't have to have so much anxiety about that.
Yeah.
yes. Oh, I can understand that for sure. My whole life
Mhm.
was just anxiety written, just
Yeah.
thinking God knows everything I'm thinking, and I
Yeah.
was just ugh. But it really did go away. I mean, obviously, anxiety is not just all to do with religion, but for me, a lot of it had to do with just the thought police,
The thought
right? And
police, yeah.
Oh.
yeah,
Mhm.
so I'd say like 60% of it left when I stopped believing in the supernatural. So it's like such a nice feeling to just know, like,
Yeah.
there's no hell, there's no demons, there's no God, like, judging me all the time, so,
Mhm.
yeah, but as far as, like, for us, we had our kids in Christian school because I wanted to just keep them in that bubble, so, as soon as I basically told them, like, "I don't believe anymore," we enrolled them into public school, and so we also then had to just tell them about there's a whole world out there. We had to
Different kinds of families.
we had to like educate them on that because they didn't know anything. And so there's a program here where we live called SOGI, and it stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity. And they talk about it once a year in the spring. And so we told the kids about it, and they had never really been exposed to that. And so, but it was honestly, it was great. They were like, okay, that's fine. And so they had their week of learning about that at school. And then they said, or we told them, if you have any questions, you can come home and like talk to us about it. And they're like, okay. And so after that happened, we're like, do you have any questions? And they're like, nope, we're good. And so it's been totally great. Like they're fine.
It was the
And
perfect time.
The
Perfect
the
age,
truth is
perfect
so much
time.
simpler, right? And
Right?
it's easier
Yes.
to accept somebody than to question them and hate on them and judge
Exactly.
them.
Exactly. So it was honestly the right time for all of us, and especially for our kids, to just not try to like, I was the one trying to just shelter them from everything. So it's nice. It actually felt like it was more work trying to keep them in this bubble. So
It's nice
Yeah.
not to always have some issue you have to be upset about. Like,
yeah.
that's the one thing that I really enjoy, is we're not always angry about something and has something we have to protest, or, it's just, I mean, there are things that we need to be concerned about and things we need to stand up for, but it seems like Christians, it's 1,000 times more things, and they're all ridiculous things.
It's a
Yeah.
spiritual
Now if we get
warfare.
now if we're upset about something, it's something actual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's really put our energy behind something that actually
That
means something.
matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
affects
was
us.
part of the moment where I deconstructed, I would say, or like really admitted to myself when I was like, okay, what can I see? What do I know? And be like,
Yeah.
we don't see and know heaven and
Mhm.
Yeah.
soul and hell and so many aspects of Christianity, including
Mhm.
God.
Mhm.
So then I was like, okay, what do I know? What can you see, touch, and know? And let me start
Yes.
there. And
Yeah.
then that makes perfect sense. And there are answers to many things.
Let's
Yeah.
change things we can change, like with your voting, whatever. You don't be trying to change people's sexual orientation. It's the dumbest thing ever. Let's
Yeah.
change things you can change.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Makes more sense. Just makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's just
Exactly.
nice to not always have to be angry about ridiculous things.
Yeah.
Mhm. Or that internal struggle with God and God's working on you. Like that's
Yeah.
one less
Yeah.
thing to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So, so if you could go back and tell yourself something like would if like this is how you're going to be 10 years from now, like what would you tell yourself? Like your Christian self now?
Oh, it's not true. The Bible's
Yeah.
not true.
Right?
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all it came down to. I'm like, oh, everything I believed is all based on the assumption that the Bible is true. That's an
Yeah.
assumption. So without
Yeah.
that foundation, it all falls apart.
Yeah. I think that was the same for me. As soon as I found out the Bible was not reliable, I was
Not
like,
infallible.
I'm done. If this isn't
It was Noah's
trustworthy, then
Ark.
yeah. Yeah, for me it was
Mhm.
Noah's Ark.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
crazy.
you hear so many things as a believer, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
there was evidence found and there
And
is
it's not
this.
true.
And then once
Yeah.
you look into it, it's like, wait, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's actually
So many
not
things are like
anything.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like, well,
Crazy.
why do they think that? And it's like the reasons why are not credible. Their logic isn't. They're really trying to make
Yeah.
what is it? Square peg fit into a round
No
hole or
round
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 hole
hole.
hole.
square peg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. They're
Yeah.
trying to make it
Yeah.
fit and it doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
And we were
Exactly.
told that women have one more rib than men because we came from Adam's rib. And it's not true.
Oh my
Did you ever hear that?
God.
Do you remember hearing that?
I can't remember hearing that one.
I
Oh my
did.
God, we were told. We were just like, women have an extra rib, and here's why. And then Stacie, you
I
read
read
something on
it.
Reddit,
I
and then
did.
when she told me, I went, wait, what? We don't
Yep.
have an extra rib? All we had to do was look at a medical journal or Google it. But we
And I
never
remember-
questioned it. We never
Yeah.
questioned it.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so
how many
silly, but
things that you're just like, because they tell you, oh, your little brain can't comprehend. God can do anything. So things that you're like common sense, of course,
Yeah.
that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You just justify like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
but God can do
That's-
anything.
But
Yes,
that's
he
such
can.
a
little
simple-
children.
it's such a simple thing to look up and verify for yourself, right? But then when someone was telling the story on Reddit, they got into medical school and they were seeing like the actual amount of ribs that people have, and they had a moment of like, wait, what? And they were going into med school, and I was like, oh my God, my heart was pounding out of my chest, and I felt so much better that I wasn't the only person. It was someone going into med school. I was like, okay,
I
yeah, this
love
is
that
really
story.
not true. This is really not true. It was just more things.
You might
just
love
like,
it, but we felt stupid.
I felt dumb. But I was like, well, if this person's going into med school, like,
Yeah.
come on. But it's
Jeez.
just simple
Totally.
things like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
like you could verify it, but you
Don't
put a
bother.
lot of trust into those pastors because you just think, why would they lie? Yeah.
And they speak so poetically, like make all these connections that don't fit, and you
Wrap
just
it up
eat
in
it
a
up.
tight little
Yeah.
bow. And, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that makes sense. That goes
Yeah.
along with my worldview. Confirmation.
Totally. A
Yes.
biblical worldview. So it
Yes.
sounds even better. It sounds even more
Yes.
profound.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness. Well,
Okay,
this
so
has
what are
been-
you guys doing now? I know you have your YouTube channel, but I mean, what do you
Yeah.
do? Like, I mean, your husband was going to be a pastor, so there went his livelihood.
So luckily he had another career before that in the
Okay,
dentistry
good.
world, in the dental world. And I'm
Okay.
in the medical sales world, and which is, I feel like part of my deconversion too is like I know how studies are done, how they're set up so that they can rule out biases. And
Okay.
so when I started digging into different things I was learning about too, if I'm reading the Christian perspective, there was always fallacies or biases that I was
Okay.
seeing for myself.
Okay. That was
So
helpful.
it's like, yeah, like, okay, I'm trying to think of an example. There's so
That's
many
all
that
right.
are going through my head.
Yes.
Like for
Yeah.
example, I don't know, the latest one was DNA and how,
Okay.
well, no, that's not a good example. Never mind. But just
That's all right. We put you on
seeing
the
that
spot.
they're not using good logic
Right.
and good
Okay.
science and good principles. They're spinning different ways to make it fit their narrative.
Yeah. Like Crystal just said, confirmation bias.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh
Stacie,
my
I want to
God.
know like how believing and not believing changed the dynamic in a marriage.
Well, I have to say, when I told my husband, he was his reaction was, I don't think you're wrong. Just take it slow, because he didn't want me to just freak out and be like, wait, no, and then backpedal and go through some kind of
Stacie wasn't
crisis.
just a Christian, Anne. She was a Christian.
was a super Christian.
There was no pumpkin carving allowed. There was the music, the television shows, everything was.
Everything.
We censored
I
everything.
censored everything.
She was the censor board of the Grand family.
Yeah. I was
So,
crazy. Like,
And you
I
know
did not
what's
say
even
that.
crazier?
Let the record show.
yeah.
And listen to this. So now we believe in evolution and how things
Uh-huh.
change over time. So because of the sheltering that you're doing with your kids, or like when you're a believer, then the kids grow up a little different than
Yep.
the non-believing kids who are exposed to social media and exposed to the movies, shows, songs, all of that.
Yeah.
And they become like the weird ones, or like
Yes.
they're the worldly ones, and it just even more validates their ideas of
Yeah.
being them and us versus them,
Yeah.
good versus
Luckily,
evil.
behind
Yeah.
Stacey's back, Brian was teaching them about dinosaurs and
Oh,
evolution
yeah.
and
Like, I believed in dinosaurs, but I was trying to figure out how the heck it worked into my whole 6,000-year-old young Earth creation idea. But, like, I think the kids were gonna like, they were balancing out pretty good because I was married to someone who kept a good balance. But, um, so when I did tell him, our conversations were able to just flourish and open right up because I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, wow, I kept everything so, just in line with how I had to think, what the Bible said." I didn't allow us to really talk about things that didn't line up with how scripture said the world should work. So
even
what?
though he would
Mhm.
find contradictions in the
Oh,
Bible,
yeah. He
and
would
he'd try
find
to talk to her about it, and she's like, "I don't wanna
yes.
talk about it."
He would literally find contradictions in the Bible and be like, "So, like, it says this, but then it says this," and I wouldn't have answers for that, and I'd be like, "I don't know why. Let's not talk about that," and I would just shut right down, and he's like, "It's kinda weird
Yes, different. Yeah.
that it would say that." So,
Totally. I
'cause
was oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, yeah, he was like, he was really interested in reading the Bible, but he was just like, this is just it makes no sense." And so he would come to like with questions, and I'd be like, "I don't have the answers, and I don't know what to tell you, so I don't want to talk about this."
And then
Yeah.
Yeah,
when you did get ask questions, you would go to the wrong source.
yeah, and it would leave us with more questions. So
Yeah, it
yeah,
was generally my mother,
yeah,
and
Oh.
she's like your family,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So she'd put my mom on speaker, and she'd ask her a question, and by the time they hung up, they would both be like,
That
"What?"
made no
Yeah.
sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd look at him and be like, "I don't know what to tell you because I don't even know what you said."
That makes it sound even worse, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Let's pretend we didn't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
That was so surprising for me, like, when I was deconverting and still in touch with Christian friends, and even the pastor of the church where we worked at, or my husband worked at, asking him questions, or like, "Have you seen this mythology?" Nope, they didn't. They weren't aware of things outside of the Bible. That was all
Nope,
they knew.
nope,
Yeah,
And like, they didn't have answers to the questions I
nope.
had because they didn't think to look at the Bible critically.
right.
But once you do, it doesn't make sense. You're just trying to harmonize everything in your brain
Yeah,
as you read it because you're assuming it's true.
Yep,
yeah. Oh,
yep.
definitely. I wonder, I mean, at one point during all of my questioning, like, I kept talking to my husband and being like, "I don't know, like, I don't know what's going on, like, I'm questioning so much," and he's like, "Do you wanna, like, message the pastor?" And I'm like, "No," because he's gonna just point me right back to the Bible,
Circular reasoning.
and
Yep,
I don't want to do that. I wanna find answers that don't just point me right back to where the thing that this is what's making me have all the questions. And he's
Mhm.
like, "Okay, no, I just he was trying to give me an answer that he thought might help," but I was like, "No, I don't think so." And, because that's what they would do. They would just be like, "Well, just go back to scripture. Everything has to line up with scripture." That's what they tell you. Everything has to
Mhm.
line up with scripture. And no, it doesn't because that's where you have all the questions.
mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you just reminded me. I remember a time too where when you would hear, for example, in a sermon, God doing these amazing things, it would always be a story from the Bible. And it was like, well,
Mhm.
why don't we have stories of now? Like, why did
Yes.
that happen then?
Yep,
Why do we only have those
yep,
examples? Why not
Yeah.
nothing current, real life?
Yeah.
yep. Well, the
There's, I think,
Reformed Church came up with that. It's because everything died once the disciples, nothing happens after the disciples died. So
yeah.
they got
There
that
was,
covered.
isn't there a scripture that says something like if they had kept track of everything, all the miracles that Jesus did,
Yeah.
it
The
would,
entire world could not hold a book
like, there would
large
just,
enough.
yeah, like there would just be so many, we wouldn't have enough books to keep track of it. And I'm like, well, then why aren't there more books? Why is it just
Yeah.
like this, that many pages in an
Yeah.
entire, like, why aren't there more records of it?
Look
Like,
what
I'd
Trent
love to
said.
read more. So miracles tend to diminish as literacy increases. Exactly. And as
Yeah.
technology increases and we can,
Yeah. We're
you
not seeing
know,
people raised from the dead with all these cell
take
phones.
photo evidence
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. So,
When I was I studied abroad in Spain, and along the Camino de Santiago, so like the pilgrimage that people take, and they stop by
okay.
these different churches where supposedly all these miracles took place. So a lot of
Mhm.
people come and get in the water, like if they have disabilities, and now they're healed by going in this water at this church.
Okay.
And so they would hang on the wall crutches. And then someone was like, "How come we don't see any wheelchairs hanging up there? Like, there's no, like,
Yeah.
big
Oh,
healings taking
yeah.
place." And then, like,
Yeah.
each church would claim to have, "Okay, we have the crown of thorns. We have the nail." And you go there and they're not there, and you're like, "Wait, didn't they say they had the evidence?" And
Yeah.
but there wasn't
Wow.
there.
Crystal
Yeah.
found the reference that I was talking about. It's John 21:25. Oops.
Yeah.
And there are so many other things Jesus did. If they were all written down, each of them one by one, I can't imagine a world big enough to hold such a library of books. So, yeah,
Mhm.
That sounds like the translation what's his face wrote. Um, what's it called?
the message.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the message?
Yeah,
Oh.
Eugene Peterson.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, this was awesome getting to know you
Yeah.
more and getting to spend some time with
Okay.
Yay.
you.
We
So,
definitely want to have your husband on too. Like together.
yeah, have you both
Definitely.
together.
Yeah.
He's such
Yep.
a good
Perfect.
teacher and is such a book of knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Awesome.
it.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Well, thank y'all so
well,
much for having me. This was so nice. And
Oh,
happy
yeah.
Thanksgiving
yes.
to you guys.
And
Oh,
I
thank you. Yeah.
Oh my God. Now
For
we don't
everyone
even
who doesn't
know.
know, it's Thanksgiving here in Canada, so we're
Yeah.
cooking. Well, my mom's cooking
Thank
So
turkey.
you.
you'll have to get back to me and let me know what Canadian Thanksgiving is
Yeah,
all
we
about,
got
or
to
I'll
look
have to
into
look
this to
into
see
that.
what it is we're celebrating because all my American friends have been asking me, why are you celebrating? I'm like, I don't know, because we like turkey.
Yeah.
It's a lot
And
of
we
work
like
for me. If we can come up with a reason for not
turkey,
celebrating, I'll be in.
and we like wine,
Yeah.
That's a good
and
reason enough, though.
that's
Right
that's
there.
my reason.
Well, I'm glad.
And the leftovers.
I thought I was gonna look dumb asking you and like, you don't know why Canadians celebrate Thanksgiving? And you were
Nope.
just like, I don't know.
No,
So
I
I
know it
love
has
it.
nothing to do with pilgrims. We did
It's
not grow up
tradition.
learning about that in Canada.
No,
No,
I actually don't know. So,
no.
oh,
I think it really has to do with the
harvest comes
harvest.
earlier
Yeah.
than the farther north
Yeah.
you go. So there we go. Yeah, we have pumpkins in our garden
Ours
right
is
now. So.
basically on harvest, but I don't know. I said to Stacie, she had all these signs
Oh my
around that
gosh.
said give thanks and whatever. And I'm like, who the fuck are we giving thanks to? Could you take those signs down, please? I don't like them because they make me think of the
That
the
song.
songs and give thanks with a grateful heart. And I'm like, get that out of my head. So she took the signs down for me.
They were
Be
all
grateful. How about that?
Yeah,
yes,
just
yeah,
be
be
grateful.
grateful
But
is
yeah, to who? To each other. We'll be grateful to each
to
other.
each
But I
other.
did
Yeah, there
not
you
like,
go.
there was one on the front door, and every time I drive up the driveway, I'm like, oh, get out of my head.
Yeah.
So I'd have to come in and turn on some country or something. And
Yeah.
I
oh my God.
literally right now still have one of those signs that says, like, I think it's fearfully and wonderfully made.
Burn
Do
it.
you?
Yes.
Why'd
Burn
you?
it and listen to the demons scream.
I know.
Oh
I'm like, I
my
gotta
gosh.
find another piece to put there in its place
I got
because
rid
Just
it'll
of
look
take
like a
it out.
bare
Just
wall.
burn
everything.
it. Just burn it.
I still had something up that was like in a corner up until a few months ago, and you were like, take this
Just
down.
down.
And I was like, okay, sorry. You're like, just get it.
I am so it just grates on me. Like seriously. Oh, I just no.
PTSD or triggers.
Yeah.
It seriously triggers because first of all, I love music. And growing up listening to so much praise and worship, I can't help it. Certain words will just trigger it. So I got to get something else on because I'm really bad for having earworms. And if it gets in my head and I just find myself singing it, especially we go to Home Sense or whatever, and they've got all the signs all
Which
over
is
the
like Home
place.
Goods.
Yeah.
It's exactly like Home
Oh
Goods.
my
Yeah.
God. Yeah, no, I just don't. No.
My
Thanks to
home-
me. I'm the one cooking the food.
There.
There you go. Just
There you
put
go.
give thanks to Dee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw there was a meme on I saw this meme. I stole it. Hang on. I'm gonna talk amongst yourselves. Hold on.
Well, I was
Okay.
gonna
There's
say
this
with
one I
the
found the other
Yeah.
day.
with the fearfully and wonderfully made, when I was a believer, my dad asked me, what does it mean to be fearfully made?
I always
And I
wondered
didn't
what
know
that
how to
meant.
answer
I
that.
always wondered, what does that mean? It sounds so poetic and pretty. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, but I'm
Wonderfully
like,
made.
what is the fearfully part?
Right.
Supposed to
Why
be a
is that
fear
a
of
good
God.
thing?
Like
We're
supposed to be-
fear. Is
yeah.
that what it is? Like we're supposed to be in fear?
Or if he made us in fear, like I don't know what that
I
means.
don't know.
don't
I
know.
never knew.
Okay.
Fearfully
So,
made.
when
he
you're
says.
an atheist
Yeah.
and
Means you're in an
somebody
abusive relationship. There you go.
No,
Yes.
you are. You seriously are.
Yes.
God
That makes
your
sense.
abusive
Or you will
spouse.
die in eternity in
Yeah.
hell.
Okay,
Yeah.
here it is. If you're as an atheist and someone asks you to say grace, dear God, we pay for all this stuff ourselves, so thanks for nothing.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's perfect.
Oh my God, I love that when it made me
perfect.
laugh.
Oh, that's
I'm
great.
just so anti all of it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Just today,
no.
my husband was telling me that somebody's battery had died, and they were like, "Hey, do you have cables?" And so he did, and he gave him a boost, and they were like, "Oh, thank God!" And he goes, "No, don't thank God, thank me. I'm the one who
Yeah.
had the jumper
Yeah.
cables."
Yeah.
She
There
was
you
like, "Oh
go.
yeah, thank you."
Yeah.
Thank you."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
People will
Just
say
simple
thank
things
God,
like
and I'm like,
that.
he doesn't exist. Yeah.
She just cuts right to the chase.
I walked into work the other day, and one of the guys at work, he's one of the regular customers. I walked in the door and he turned me on. He went, "Oh, good Lord." And I went, "There is no Lord. And if there was, he's not good." And he's like, "You know what I mean."
I love that.
Oh my God. I'm just so done with it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't even come up with something else to say. Like when Stacie sneezes, we still say bless you, but I can't get into the gazoon type thing. I just can't get into
Yeah.
No,
that.
I can't say that.
No. So we
That's
need,
true. I do
there's
still
certain
say that.
things I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get like all wacko about it, but I don't want the give thanks things everywhere. So
Yeah.
there's that.
And I'll probably still be celebrating Christmas and
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
all the
but
things.
It's
Santa.
pretty.
We'll be
Uh-huh.
grateful
Pretty.
for fake Santa. How's that? Because it's just as real as the rest of it. So
Mhm.
why not?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
It's
Well,
time for
thanks
wine.
everyone for being here. And
Thank you, Anne. And yeah, we'll definitely have to do this with you and your husband. I'd love that.
Mhm.
Thank
Yeah.
you guys.
And
So
he
nice
was in the
talking to
chat.
y'all.
I saw he was in the chat. So
Yeah.
thanks for
Oh,
joining us in the
nice.
chat. What's his
Yeah.
name?
Mark.
Mark
Mark.
Peralta.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
And
All
thanks everybody
right.
for being here.
Yeah. Thanks so much.